Okay, so in the last video I created this stylized tree, and I hand painted all these textures. You can check that video. I'll put a link in the description. However, to export this tree into Unity, I have made a few changes, and those changes are in texture basically. So you can see the material here. I have divided this tree into three different textures, one for leaf, one for flower, and one for trunk. And here you can see it has three different materials, and each one has individual texture. So I'll show you the texture also. This one is for the trunk, and this one is for the leaves. I just copied the leaves into a new texture file and placed them according to their color. And then this one is for the flower. And another change that you'll see is that this tree now only has this armature. So I removed the uh, displacement modifier, which was giving the secondary animation to the trees. So right now if I play the animation, you can see that the tree is moving with the noise modifier only. Okay, so if I go to graph editor and let me just select this armature, go to pose mode, and this is the bone where we applied the noise modifier to the rotation values. So right now you can see it is XYZ is affected by the noise modifier, but to export this to Unity we have to bake these modifiers to the actual F curve, and for doing that we have to select this, go to key, and here we have the option of bake curve. Select it and press OK. And shortcut for this is Alt C, so you can press that too in the window itself. So Alt C and OK. So now you can see the modifier is baked to the curve itself. And do the same thing with the Y quaternion and Z. So just select the Y, Alt C, bake curve, and Z, Alt C, bake curve. So now we do not need these modifiers, so just delete those. And if you press play, you can see the actual F curve is now driving the animation. Okay, so now I'll just export it to FBX file, and if you do not have this add-on, just go to preferences, and in add-ons search for the FBX and turn this add-on on, import export FBX format. You can also go here and save the preferences, and now go to file, export FBX. Now here are some options. As you can see in this scene, I only have this particular tree, but if you have multiple objects, select them and check this selected object option. But I have this tree only, so I'll leave it empty. And here in the transform section, this apply scaling setting set to FBX units scale. Rest of the options leave it as they are, and just export. Okay, so here I am in Unity, and I have created this basic scene, and I am using Unity version 2020.1. However, the method that I am going to use will also work in the previous versions. So I've created this new folder, and to import those assets, you can just drag and drop those inside the window, or you can just right click and select this import new asset and select the FBX file as well as the textures and select import. So here is our FBX file, and you can see all the materials are linked to the relevant textures. However, the alpha is not working properly, so select the textures and go to this alpha is transparency, check this on and apply. So now you can see these work fine. Okay, so these materials are linked to the FBX file as per Blender settings, but I'm going to create 3 different materials for each one of these. So let me create the material for trunk first. So just right click, create and material, and let me name it trunk and VD for reference. And you can see it has made a URP lit material by default. So in the workflow mode, select specular, select this alpha clipping and drag this trunk texture to the base map. So here it is, and bring the smoothness down. So this is the basic trunk texture. Save it. And for leaves and flowers, I am going to use the different shader that I'll create in the shader graph. So right click, create shader and select this PBR graph, and let me name it leaf and VD for reference. So double click to open this graph. So here you can see the basic settings of PBR master, and here in the settings, let me just come here. In the settings, again the workflow is specular, surface type is opaque, and blend is alpha, and let's make it two-sided. Alright, now in this shader graph board, click this plus icon and select texture 2D. I'm going to name it base color, and just drag the leaf texture inside the texture, and I'll just bring it out here. Okay, so now just right click, create node and select sample texture 2D, and we'll plug this base color into the texture, and then this RGB to the albedo. So this is the basic color setup. Now for the sake of bloom, I'm going to add a bit of emission. So again I'll select another value with vector 1, that is going to be the emission strength, and I'll just bring it here, and for this I'm going to use this same base color, and I'm going to multiply it with this emission strength. So right click, create node, select multiply, and just add the sample texture in the first one and the emission strength into the second one. Give it a value of 1 or maybe a bit more, 1.1, and just plug it into emission. And save asset in this leaf VD shader. Just right click on the shader and create a material so that it takes this shader for the base material, and I'm going to give it the name leaf and VD for reference. So you can see it has the emission strength value here and base color value here. You can plug different values here. So right now it is 1.1, and just to see how it works, I'm going to go in this scene and select the tree FBX file, and in the material section drag and drop these material inside the relevant section. So this trunk material, I'm going to drop it in the trunk section, and this leaf one into the leaf section, and then apply. Now I'm just going to drag it inside our scene here. Press E to rotate. Okay, so we can see that I didn't set the alpha right. So to fix that, just go to shader again, and here in the sample texture 2D you have this option of alpha. So let me just bring it down and just drag this alpha to alpha of PBR master, and also select this alpha clip threshold and set it to 0.5. Save asset, and now if you see in the scene, it works fine. For the flowers we haven't set the materials yet. I'm going to set it once I complete this leaf. So for now this works fine, and I add a little bit of emission to these parts so that it looks good. As right now you can see the trunk is a little bit dark, so you can also go to this standard material of trunk and add this texture to emission also. Select it and drag it to emission, and you can see it lightens it up and it adds a little bit of bloom. Once we are going to use the bloom in the post processing, it will look even better. So now I am going to add the animation also. So here we have this animation, and as you can see, this itself creates prefab, but what I like to do is I just right click and go to prefab and unpack completely, and now again drag it inside the window to create it a new prefab. And now I'll just right click, create an animation controller, and I'm going to name it tree VD for reference. Double click this animation controller, and here you can see the animator. And now I'll just select this animation and drag it inside the animator, and it automatically creates a value just after entry. So now select this prefab and drag this animation controller in this prefab. So now this animator is linked to this tree prefab. So now if you press play, you can see the animation working. However, it stops after just one run. As you can see, it has stopped. So to make it a continuous loop, just go to this animation, go to edit, and here you can select this loop time, and also click this loop pause and select apply. Now if you press play, you can see our animation works fine. So this is our basic animation for the tree itself, and now I am going to add the secondary movement to the leaves and the flowers in our shader graph. And to do that, I am going to use the vertex displacement technique. Alright, so for creating the secondary movement to our leaves, I am going to create a vertex displacement technique, and this technique I learned from BRACKEYS. I will also link the original video in the description. You can check that out. So it's gonna be a bit long, so just bear with me. So let's just start with creating a position node. And create a time node. And now create a tiling and offset node. So what we are going to do, we are going to tile the noise pattern using this time node. So just plug this into the tiling, and we are going to plug the time node including a multiplication factor. So just create a multiply, and now just create a vector. So let me create a vector 1, and I'm gonna name it wind movement, and give it a default value of 1 for now. Drag it out. So let's multiply this time with this wind movement and plug this into the offset. Alright, now let's create a gradient noise. And plug the tiling and offset to UV. Now you can see it's moving, and we can control this movement also. So let us create another vector1 and name this wind density, and give it a value of 1 for now. Drag it out and connect it to the scale. Now I'm going to subtract it. So create a subtract node, subtract, and subtract it by 0.5 so that only the darker values are there. Now just multiply it with another controlling value, and that value is gonna be wind strength. So let's create another vector, name it wind strength, keep the value 1 for now, drag it out and plug it in multiply. Alright, so now just create an add node and a position node, and I'm going to split this position node. So create a split, plug it, and then add this multiply with the R value of the split. Great. Now create a combine node and we are going to combine this offset add value with rest of green blue values. Leave the alpha. Now just create a transform node and we are going to transform this value from world to object. Great. Now just create another UV node, UV, and we are going to lerp this transform value with this UV node. So create a lerp node, lerp, and create another position node, set it to object, plug this position and split this UV. So create another split node, and this time plug this green value to the Y, and our transform goes to B value. So this is the complete node setup for the secondary movement. Let me just drag it here, and now finally you can plug this into the vector position of PBR master. save asset. Now if you go back to scene, you can see our secondary movement towards the leaves. If you press play, now you can see the combined movement of the whole tree. First one from the our animation, and second one from the node setup that we just created. Now you can control the movement of the leaves. So just select this, go to this leaf shader, and here you have all those three vectors, and you can control the values from here. So if you change the wind movement, you can see the effect. Okay, so this is the final tree. I have also created the same shader for flower, except I have just removed that lerp node that I added in the end. So here transform directly goes into the vertex position. Now if you go to scene, and here you can see the values that work fine for me. So wind movement 4, wind density and strength 2.5 and 0.1. Now I just want to add one more thing. If you want to fill the scene with the same trees, because you only have this one animation, you can create variations with this one also. Okay, so if you duplicate this prefab and just move it, and now if you press play, you can see that both of these trees are sharing the common animation, and so the movement of these trees look synced. Now to avoid this and create a variation for this animation, we can just offset this animation. So come here to the imported file and select this tree animation, Ctrl D to duplicate it, and let me name it tree VD2. Select it, and here in the cycle offset, just give it a random value for random animation like 1.5. and now create another animation controller, just name it tree VD2, and in this animator drag this second animation that we created, and here in this second prefab just change this controller from tree VD to this second controller. Now if you press play, you can see that both of these trees are now running the same animation but at an offset distance, so these look different. So this way you can create multiple animations using the same trick, and you can also create a lengthy animation within the blender itself and then make multiple loops out of it. Okay, so here you can see another scene that I set up, and I have added a bit more variation in this same material. So what I did actually is that I took that leaf texture and I made a gray texture out of it, and in the shader I created this color addition also. So here you can see I added two colors for bottom and top and blend those two together, multiply it with the gray texture, and then added it to the albedo. Now what this allows me to do is that if you select this tree, suppose, and you go to this tree leaf material, here you can select the color that will blend with this gray texture. So you can change the color within Unity itself. So suppose this is my bottom color, a darker one, and this is my top color, a lighter tone color, like this. So in this way I can create multiple variations of leaves colors within Unity using this same technique. So these are two different methods. Either you can just paint it and have the fixed color, or you can use the gray color and then mix it with the color inside Unity itself. Alright, so this completes the video. I have put the link for downloading these assets from my Sketchfab account in the description, and I have also added the BRACKEYS video link so you can see how he made this shader. So thank you so much. Bye bye.